Oh, receive her now, we pray. Consume her as would a furnace. Burn on, O ancient Rome! Burn on!
Nero is probably the most enigmatic of all Roman tyrants. Surely nobody could be as twisted as the histories have made him out to be. This was the man who murdered his stepbrother, his mother, and two of his wives. The man who might have committed incest with his mother, who castrated and forcibly married a premature boy, whom he dressed up to look like his dead wife, Poppaea. Poppaea, in turn, we're told he kicked to death while she was pregnant with his child. He used Christians as human torches to light up his parties, subjecting them to the fangs of starved dogs that ripped them limb to limb. And of course, the man who set fire to Rome to build a sprawling palace complex on the ashes of the city's charred foundations. To get to the bottom of any character analysis of Nero, we're forced to grapple with quite a complex picture. One, we're talking about a man who ruled over Rome 2 millennia ago. A lot of sources are lost to us just because of time. The main sources we have at our disposal were written at least a half century after Nero's time, and they are, it stands to reason, extremely biased. In fact, these writings are largely based on even more biased writings from Nero's time. Add to that 2 millennia of damning Christian writings, as well as plays, songs, operas and films. The popular imagination of Nero is now completely distorted. So with this in mind, and without just drawing on grisly facts of his rule in isolation, who was Nero really? Before we explore Nero the man, let's get that biography in. Alicia, hit the clock. Nero was born in 37 AD, the son of Agrippina the Younger. Now, Agrippina wasn't your average dame. She was the great-granddaughter of Augustus, Rome's first emperor and one of the most important leaders of the ancient world. She was also the daughter of Germanicus, an extremely popular military general who gained fame for his campaigns in Germania and would have become emperor had it not been for his premature death. So Agrippina had a big name. What's more, she was the sister of Caligula, the third Roman emperor who you'll no doubt have heard of. She was very close to power, a bit too close for comfort. Caligula had her exiled for potential but ill-defined involvement in a major attempt on his life known as the Plot of the Three Daggers. Little Nero, who was just 2 years old when his mother was banished, was left in the care of his paternal aunt, Domitia Lepida, an influential patrician generally believed to have been a kind influence on Nero. After 2 years in exile, Agrippina reunited with her estranged son in 41 AD with high hopes for his future. Proud of her lineage from Augustus, she was also keen to stay close to power herself. Scheming her way to the top, the ambitious Agrippina married her uncle Emperor Claudius in 49 AD, becoming his fourth wife. Now that Agrippina was Empress of Rome, she acted to secure Nero's claim to the throne. The following year, in 50 AD, Claudius adopted Nero as his son, casting aside his actual son and heir, Britannicus. Agrippina made sure Nero had a fantastic education. His mentor was the one and only Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher and a statesman in his own right. She had Seneca recalled from exile to educate Nero in statecraft and rhetoric based on his own moral and political teachings. In 53 AD, when Nero was 15, Agrippina married her son to Claudius's daughter, Claudia Octavia. Nero didn't have much choice but to put up with Agrippina's maneuvering, even if he would have preferred watching gladiator games and playing music. In October 54, Claudius died after eating mushrooms. Whether they were poisoned by Agrippina or simply poisonous and eaten by accident, we'll never know for sure. In any case, Nero ascended the throne aged 16. His domineering mother acted as co-empress, rejoicing in having her puppet son in power. Nero's first 5 years as ruler are lauded as a golden era. Though it's agreed among historians that this is an oversimplification, Nero certainly inspired a lot of hope. The political elite were sick and tired of the status quo. They'd had enough of their former emperors being manipulated by ambitious, powerful women and ex-slaves. They'd had enough of the treason trials, particularly in the reigns of Tiberius and Caligula, where anybody who fell out of favour with the emperor could be banished or executed at their whim. Nero promised to put an end to all this. Following Seneca's counsel, Nero vowed to rule in the image of his ancestor Augustus, promising the Senate it would have much more independence over state affairs. And Nero actually did a lot of good. He upheld many of his promises, reducing taxes and banning capital punishment. He granted slaves the right to bring civil complaints against abusive masters. Taking inspiration from the Greek world, he organized competitions in poetry, theatre, and in athletics, offering more forms of public entertainment than simply gladiator shows. So, all good on the public front. Family affairs, though, were another matter. Agrippina wielded a lot of power, especially in the early years of Nero's rule. Coins at the time depicted both Nero and his mother, unique in Roman history. But Agrippina's hold over her son was insecure from the start. Nero couldn't tolerate his overbearing mother vying for political control and controlling his private life. She doggedly opposed Nero's extramarital affairs, forcing him to stay loyal to his wife. As a result, Nero gradually turned towards his closest mentors, Seneca and Burrus, Burrus being the prefect of the Praetorian Guard. They didn't like Agrippina's influence in politics either, and they were more than happy to deepen the wedge between mother and son. Agrippina, in turn, couldn't tolerate being left out in the dark, so she started blackmailing Nero. She claimed support for Nero's rivals, undermining his claim to the throne. See, the system of succession that had been created under Augustus was completely flawed. There was no formal law of accession, so anybody with some link to the predecessor had a plausible claim to the throne. In 55 AD, Agrippina started threatening Nero by pledging allegiance to Britannicus, Claudius's natural son. So what did Nero do? Well, he killed his stepbrother, of course. A little bit of poison slipped into his drink, and Britannicus went bye-bye. Brexitus. Nero and Seneca, master of propaganda, spun the very discreet murder as an epileptic fit, and Nero carried on with his quote-unquote ruling business as usual. 4 years later, in 59 AD, we're told Agrippina was so desperate to secure her grip over her son that she offered herself to him sexually. And the rumor went further that Nero actually gave in. In any case, Nero's advisors forced the emperor to shut his mother out. For some reason, they didn't think incest with his mother would make for good PR. Agrippina was also badgering Nero about his new affair with his new lover, the ravishing and witty Poppaea Sabina. It was all just too much for Nero, now 19 years old and tired of his cock-blocking mother. So he went ahead and killed her too. Did he have her poisoned? No, too risky. Throat slit? No, too obvious. How about having her board a collapsible ship and making her drown? That one. The ship, deliberately designed to collapse, did in fact collapse, with Agrippina inside, not far off the Bay of Naples. To Nero's despair, though, Agrippina made it out alive. Seriously wounded, she was able to swim to safety. Nero sent out his thugs to the villa where she was staying, and they stabbed her to death. Seneca, the PR whiz, once again wrote a very effective cover story. He flipped the script, claiming Agrippina had sent an assassin to kill Nero. Her plan had been foiled, and she had committed suicide in shame. Nero was hailed as a hero, applauded by senators and the public. He even threw a series of massive parties, the Ludi Maximi, the Great Games, and later the Juvenile Games, simply called the Juvenalia, private games to celebrate the first shaving of Nero's beard. For the ancient sources, the death of his mother marked the end of the Golden Era, and Nero's descent into tyranny. Certainly, with Agrippina out of the picture, he could now indulge his artistic passions. He sang on stage for the first time at the Juvenalia, accompanied by the lyre. Nero, the lover of chariot racing, music, theatre, gymnastics, and poetry, essentially all the artistic and athletic things which the ancient Greeks valued, wanted to encourage Roman society to be more like Greek society. But the Roman elite was simply not ready for this. And they certainly weren't ready to have an emperor who put ruling second to the arts and competitive games. Seneca and Burrus managed to contain the emperor somewhat, and if not, at least ruled capably in his stead. But in 62, Burrus died. Seneca, without his co-star, resigned shortly thereafter. New, more sinister advisors, like the shady prefect Tigellinus, vied for the emperor's ear and indulged his artistic zeal, now virtually unfettered. Nero was becoming more of an embarrassment by the day. That same year in June, Nero's first wife, Claudia Octavia, was brutally murdered while in exile. To put it plainly, Nero was fed up with her. He found her unappealing, and after several years of marriage, she hadn't borne him any children. More importantly, he wanted to marry his new lover, the highborn, beautiful, and ambitious Poppaea Sabina. We're told she pressured Nero to get rid of Claudia and make her empress instead. On the 19th of June 64, the Great Fire of Rome broke out. It flattened 3 of Rome's 14 regions and left only 4 untouched. Rumours went round that Nero, already deeply unpopular with the political elite, started the fire. Though he oversaw a magnificent, albeit costly, relief and reconstruction effort, his architectural plans shocked everyone. When the fire was finally extinguished, Nero started work on a huge, landscaped palace complex right in the heart of Rome. Taking up 1/3 of the city's landscape, Nero's golden house, the Domus Aurea, became a despised symbol of decadence, excess, and alarming indifference to human suffering. Nero had gone from laughingstock to a cold-hearted tyrant. The elite were forced to see their estates destroyed, their purses depleted, their holy temples looted, so that this tone-deaf, wife-killing narcissist could build his ridiculous palace on the ashes of their great city. Of course, the reality was more complex. We'll do a deep dive into this later. The rumours about Nero starting the fire, rumours which suited many political agendas, circulated more widely. Nero needed a scapegoat, and who better to blame than a fanatical, deeply unpopular sect who bashed Romans for their many gods and craved a fiery apocalypse before the second coming of Christ. Yes, Nero blamed the Christians, at the time no more than a particularly zealous Jewish splinter sect. He had them burned alive at stakes and used them as human torches to illuminate his palace grounds, or mauled to death by dogs. Though the fury of the masses was somewhat appeased, and many carried on adoring Nero throughout his reign, the upper classes remained furious. The following year, in 65 AD, a motley crew of knights, soldiers, officers of the Praetorian Guard, and noblewomen tried to assassinate Nero and replace him with the conspiracy's ringleader, Calpurnius Piso. The Piso conspiracy was foiled, thanks to tip-offs from the conspirators' slaves. The plotters were executed, driven to suicide, or banished. Seneca, caught up in the ensuing crackdown, possibly with only loose ties to the conspiracy, was forced to have his veins cut. However, many participants were pardoned, a testament to Nero's relative leniency with his enemies on this occasion. That same year, after a domestic row, Nero allegedly kicked the pregnant Poppaea in the stomach, accidentally killing her and his unborn child. This is disputed though, as we'll see later. Then, in early 66, he married a recent lover, Statilia Messalina, a wealthy divorcee with noble ancestry. In a bizarre public ceremony, Nero also married a young boy said to be the spitting image of Poppaea Sabina. He named him Sporus and married him after castrating and making a woman out of him. In 66 AD, Nero committed to one of the most outrageous and self-destructive decisions of his rule. He embarked on a 15-month tour of Greece to participate in the traditional Greek games. This is clearly evidence of Nero's complete loss of political awareness. Nero, while he was away, left the influential and conniving freedman Helius in charge of the empire, transgressing one of his most important accession promises not to delegate power to overambitious ex-slaves. To nobody's surprise, the Greek games were rigged, and Nero won every single competition. The high point of the tour was when Nero announced the liberation of Greece from Roman administration and taxation, earning him widespread popularity across the Hellenistic world. There Nero was, gallivanting across Greece, competing in games and contests the Roman elite considered foreign and decadent, fawning over Olympic judges he had bought off. Meanwhile, the elite was outraged with the political climate. Nero transgressed another of his accession promises by executing several respected generals for unsubstantiated heresy. A fierce revolt was also raging in the Jewish province of Judea, and Nero's ridiculous palace was still being constructed while Rome resembled a wasteland. Helius urged Nero to resume his duties. Nero returned to Rome by the end of 67, but still oblivious to the growing discontentment, he pursued his artistic passions. 3 months later, in March 68, the governor of Gaul, Julius Vindex, declared a state of rebellion, largely due to excessive taxation. Nero outraged the Senate by failing to take action fast enough and carrying on with his music, even though the revolt was crushed some 2 months later. Nero's combined laxness and indecisiveness also encouraged more revolts in the provinces, in northern Africa under the leader Clodius Macer, as well as in Spain under their governor Galba. As the revolt spread, Galba was proclaimed emperor by the legions. Nero lost the support of the Praetorian Guard. He then lost the Senate, who declared him a public enemy and condemned Nero to die a slave's death, that is, on a cross and under the whip. Virtually all his allies abandoned Nero, and he was forced to flee the city, accompanied by only 4 loyal freedmen, including his eunuch and wife, Sporus. After seeking refuge in a villa 4 miles outside the city, he committed suicide, stabbing himself in the throat with a dagger. When a centurion arrived to cover the wound, Nero is said to have croaked too late. With his death at the age of 30, the Julio-Claudian dynasty that had been inaugurated by Augustus ended. Galba, the governor of Spain, with the support of the Senate and the provincial insurrectionists, was declared the first emperor of the Flavian dynasty. Alright, school time's over. Sit back, relax, and let the show commence. Now, we're about to explore a key theme running through Nero's life. This was his insatiable need for attention. Nero didn't just want to be loved, he wanted to be glorified. He wanted to be admired all over and remembered forever. Now, we're not going to go into psychohistory, nor are we going to make any sweeping conclusions, but it's worth laying down the facts of Nero's childhood. Basically, his parents weren't the best role models. Nero grew up in a snake pit with the Viper Queen for a mother. Agrippina was a manipulative woman with pools of ambition and, suffice to say, probably wasn't Mother of the Year. This was the same woman who, after exile, navigated a dangerous web of Roman politics as well as powerful men's bedsheets to become Emperor Claudius's wife, and the same woman who drove romantic rivals like Lollia Paulina to suicide. By the age of 11, Nero was named heir to the Emperor Claudius, both puppets to Agrippina's political ambitions. Nero had to face the fact that his accession could turn very ugly indeed. While Augustus had set up a supposedly stable system of succession, in reality it was just dreadful. Court intrigues and family politics led to assassinations, ruthless conniving, and military violence. Nero would have been brought up with the knowledge he could be murdered before even ascending the throne, or not long after. Add to that her controlling attitude over his private and public life, you likely have the groundwork for an insecure, anxious, and deeply troubled young man with a lot to compensate for. And this wasn't just his mother, his father wasn't much better. By Suetonius' account, Gnaeus Domitius was, quote, a man who was in every aspect of his life detestable. Violent and conceited, he made enemies wherever he went. 9 days after Nero's birth, at a purification ceremony, Gnaeus himself was quoted to have said, "Nothing born of myself and Agrippina can be anything other than odious and a public disaster." When Nero came to power, it was to the great fortune of all that he was in the very capable hands of the level-headed and clear-sighted mentors Seneca and Burrus. In fact, it's likely Nero didn't do an awful lot of ruling, because they were so competent themselves. Seneca and Burrus advised the young Nero to act with clementia, the noblest of all values for a Roman emperor. This worked out in his favor. It wasn't completely against his nature, as we'll soon see, because it meant senators and the people could praise him. In the early years of his rule, Nero refused gold and silver statues of himself, and even the honor of having the first month of the year changed to December, the month of his birthday. Suetonius, one of the ancient authors on Nero, notes that the emperor was able to greet men of all orders by their names from memory. On one occasion, after being thanked by the Senate for a good deed, the emperor replied saying, "When I have deserved it." Suetonius also notes the young Nero hated signing death warrants, allegedly saying, "How I wish I had never learned to write." The point is that Nero could show great virtue in his early years, and the praise he received for it from senators can be seen as sort of gold stars for a young adolescent. You could also see it as virtue for the sake of virtue, but Nero's indifference to politics later on in life suggests otherwise. On the matter of Nero's virtue, though, we should be cautious with the ancient sources. When writing about Nero, they like the idea of decline from early promise. characterizing Nero as good in his first 5 years of rule and only pointing out the redeeming things could suit their character arc of a 5-year golden age followed by descent into madness. Following Seneca's counsel to rule with clemency, Nero became more and more visible to the people, appearing at games or circuses, often to hear the mobs vent their many grievances. In 58 AD, 4 years into his rule, the people were complaining about taxes, particularly the methods tax collectors used for harbour dues and other indirect taxes across the empire. So Nero decided he would simply abolish taxation. As you might expect, he received unending praise and love for it from the people. Strategically, though, it was disastrous. The public treasury was already in the red and was only just about staying afloat thanks to taxation. A similar incident happened much later during his tour of Greece, where he competed in the Olympic Games in 66 AD. The crowning act was the completely unexpected liberation of the Greek heartland, at the time the province of Achaia. Freedom from direct Roman rule meant freedom from all tribute obligations. Now, it's hard to see this as anything besides almost entirely emotional. Miles away from the boring and stuffy attitudes of his empire, Nero was finally basking in the glory of Hellenistic civilization, where his artistic and competitive interests could find an outlet and an audience that could sing his praise. He knew that the decision would make him even more unpopular with the Senate than he already was, but he went ahead with it anyway. The Greeks were relatively peaceful under the Romans. Granting them virtual independence wasn't strategically necessary for Roman interests. It was Nero who wanted to treat the Greeks with the respect he thought they deserved. In return, he would be praised and loved by the people at the cost of being loathed by the political elite. It was here, once again, where the desire for clemency and praise took precedence over political wisdom. Nowhere was his desire to be loved clearer than in the festivities he organised. In 59 AD, after Agrippina was brutally killed on his orders, Nero organised the Ludi Maximi. Did he mourn his mother? No. Did he throw one of the greatest parties the ancient world had ever seen? Yes! 2 or 3 days, 5 or 6 theatres altogether. Tens of thousands of commoners came to see senators and knights compete in games and performances of all kinds. One ancient play called The Fire was performed, which involved a real house burning on stage. One well-known knight even rode an elephant down a tightrope from the highest vault in the theatre. And Nero was there in the balcony, watching it all. Each day he greeted the audience and showered them with vouchers to buy all sorts of gifts, from food to precious metals, horses, slaves, ships, and entire properties. The atmosphere must have been electric. And this was Nero's first major party. Until his downfall in 68, he would throw at least one major party every year. In 64 AD, he hosted a wild beast hunt for gladiators, then flooded the entire arena to recreate a sea battle. After the demonstration was over, he had the arena drained in order to host gladiatorial duels. Nero then apparently flooded it again to host a floating public banquet, now known as the Banquet of Tigellinus. It was, without a doubt, Nero's most decadent party on record. More on that later. Nero took the famous Roman phrase, bread and circuses, to an entirely new level. This phrase is still used today as a way of talking about how politicians manage the masses by keeping them fed and entertained. For Nero, though, games were simply some of the best ways to get people to like him, and him only. Never mind about the government. And if he could show off his athletic or artistic talents by performance or rigged competition, so much the better. Even if it was fake praise, it was still praise. And that was enough for Nero. Whereas in his first few years as emperor, Nero would often sit in closed boxes and only sometimes make public appearances, it was after his mother died that Nero started to be seen almost exclusively from an open balcony. He would also happily walk and mingle with crowds. During a private party on his grounds after the Great Fire of Rome, Nero, dressed as a charioteer, was said to walk freely among the masses without any concern for his life. This in itself is fairly strong evidence that his efforts did pay off, and that generally he was popular, especially in the eastern parts of the Roman Empire. After all, we know that many people still mourned him after his death and placed flowers on his statues for years long after. The fact that 3 fake Neros emerged as far as modern-day Greece and Iran and amassed considerable followings is a good testament to the enduring popularity Nero had with the people. Fortunately for Nero, the admiration and glory he craved could be achieved through his very natural interests and talents, or so he liked to think. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, we have only scratched the surface.